welcome back to Haunted Hearsay. I'm Caroline. I'm on Donegal, as usual, joined by Ben down in Dublin. How are you, Ben?
I'm good, yeah. Nice.
Yeah, we got through Halloween. The seasons are just flying in.
I know it's dark early and this.
Yeah, this is November, the darkest month of the year. I'm actually sitting, if you can hear the noise in the background, I've got a Christmas cake in the oven, so it's already officially that time of the year.
Nice, yeah.
Getting stuff ready. But it being the darkest month of the year, we're going to cover some of the darkest subjects. And as I mentioned to you the other day, it was interesting because I'm on a lot of paranormal sites. Go on and just see what people are posting, and most of it's very interesting. But I'm on a lot of American ones, and as you can imagine, whatever we have, they have it in greater numbers. But as a girl posted it during the week, this big long rant about Satanism and how she wished people would get it right and that they weren't devil worshipping, child molesting, people killing characters, that they were just, worshippers of the morning star. And oh my, she made it sound like this, take me to San Francisco and let me put flowers in my hair sort of stuff about it. And I had asked her, I was like, seriously, that's not what Satanism is. And she's like, yes, have you ever read a book? I thought, I've read a few, but I'm quite sure I've probably not read the one she's talking about, which turned out to be a book about Anton McVeigh. So before I go any further to you, if I said to you Satanism, what would be your definition?
Well,
what would you think of? The first thing, how would you try and describe the word?
First thing, and I know I'm wrong, but well, I don't know if I'm wrong, but the first thing I would say is devil. We'll get into it, but devil worship, like the worship of.
Exactly. Now, she claims that they don't believe in any gods and that words don't matter.
Yeah.
Now, and that isn't what the meaning of the word is. So I know that it's an English word. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that's the origins, and that are English. It was an adaptation of various other translations, but Satan is an English word. So I thought, where better to look up the meaning of an English word than the Oxford English Dictionary? I'm not even trusting Wikipedia to this one. Definitely not.
Don't know if you can.
Yeah, Satanism. And here we go. Satanism. Satanism, the worship of Satan, typically involving a travesty of Christian symbols and practices. Derivatives Satanist. So, I mean, it is what it says on the tin. If you're a Satanist, you're a follower of Satan. So therefore you believe in that. You can't say that you don't believe in any gods, be it, the devil or God, because you're a Satanist. But she was adamant. She was sticking to her guns in this. And I says, I don't care what your practices are. I'm telling you, if you call yourself a Satanist, that's exactly what you are, a follower of Satan.
Yeah.
So this is where I was telling you, and you sent me a thesaurus interpretation.
Paragraph, yeah.
You should read that now. That's actually very interesting. Just to get the point across to anyone that doesn't understand what the word Satanism actually is.
Yeah, well, I think I know where the confusion is coming from. We can, as I said, get into it after. But so this is from the Dictionary of the Occult, which is just a small book I have. In under Satanism, it says the worship of Satan. It involves black magic, sorcery, and the invocation of demons and the forces of darkness who are this is a hard word to say, appropriated, sorry, by blood sacrifices and similar rites. In Christian cultures, these ceremonies include the Black Mass, a mockery of the Christian rite. Medieval Christian writers tended to label any dualist sect as Satanist. From the later Middle Ages, Satanism and witchcraft were considered synonymous. There was a Satanist revival in the mid-19th century, and evidence exists that the cult persists. Satanists or Luciferians believe that Satan is the power behind the processes of nature. What is natural is acceptable. Sin is only what is unpleasant. Unlike the Christian God, stern and moralistic, repressive and chastening, Satan is the leader of a liberated people who are free and actually encouraged to indulge in the good things in life, including uninhabited sexual activity. And so,
Anything goes, in other words.
yeah. Now, when I
But
was,
that is very much the interpretation. There is no other. Well, I mean, you can interpret words all you want, but you're
that
either
was a
doing
few
proper.
interpretations, really, because it was like, this is what I was in medieval times. This is what the Christians think.
But it's the actual word Satanist,
Yeah.
Satanism.
Now,
It's the very word implies you're doing what the word says.
I
You're
Googled, I had heard two things recently enough about satanic groups that are,
Can I just finish about this Anton
yeah.
McVeigh guy then?
Well, yeah, this is to do with him, but
Yeah. Well, it was just with them. There was another girl joined in then, and they were very vocal about the fact that I'd obviously never read any books. And I thought, well, I've read a lot of books, including books about Aleister Crowley. And I mean, let's face it, we know, like, a lot of bad things about him. They had no idea who he was. So I thought, well, right, alarm bells. Then they started accusing me of being a Baptist, a Baptist Bible thumper. And I never once brought Christianity into it.
Baptist.
And then I says, no, I'm not actually. I'm an Irish, Scots, Celtic type person. And no, I'm not a Baptist. I'm not a Bible thumper. So I got a sort of a half apology. Oh, thought you were one of those. I says, no, it's very much an American thing, that carry on. But she was like, well, what she's trying to explain, here's me, look, I know exactly what she's trying to explain. People must think sometimes that she started explaining to me the Dawn Star. I said, I know who the Dawn Star is. I know who Lucifer is. I understand what a fallen angel is, and I know the story. I know the story behind it. And I didn't have to go into all of that with her because I knew what the girl was trying to say. It's not like we aren't just out 7 days a week murdering babies. It's the morning star is the bringer of light, etc. And she was trying to and we don't believe in good, we don't believe in God, we don't believe in the devil. And I said, well, as a Satanist, you do believe in the devil because you're calling yourself a Satanist. So whether you believe it or not, you're doing Satan's work. And as such, he's the great deceiver. He's not just going around as this sort of horned, cloven foot person all the time. He is the great deceiver. But she just couldn't get her head around it. But then her argument was because this guy, Anton McVeigh, now, which I haven't looked up, so I'm going to go to you with that in a minute. But her argument was that he thought he used the word Satanist for his cult as a slap in the face to the church.
Okay. Yeah.
And the same way that the devil uses it as a slap in the face to God, is the same sort of, but they don't see that connection. And that words weren't important. He was just trying to point out, if you were good in your heart and you lived a good life and did good deeds and looked after animals, etc., you could call yourself a Satanist and still be a good person. This was his argument.
Okay.
So that was, to me, it's like I knew what she was trying to say, but that was where the great deceit comes in. You're calling yourself a Satanist. You're following all his rules and regulations. They've obviously read one book, and it was Anton McVeigh's book. And in the end up, I was like, well,
he has a lot of books. I checked that one out as well.
I didn't know. I thought I don't know who the guy is, and I purposely didn't look it up because I thought you might. Wanted to sort of go into it fresh whenever you said something to me.
Yeah, exactly.
But I really thought, well, if words don't matter, why are the two of you arguing so much with me over the meaning of the word Satanist?
Yeah.
It didn't end the argument. It should have done, because
looking for a fight.
Yeah. So I'm hoping now that you have a bit more information to,
Yeah, well, I do. I briefly looked him up. I had heard of it before, and basically, what Anton, I think it's Anton LaVey.
LaVey, sorry, beg your pardon.
LaVey.
I was making him Irish there by giving him a McVeigh.
But he's dead, right? And I think whatever is still going is his son or something. Right. But he founded the Church of Satan, which is subtly different. Well, it's still, like, I presume that's Satanism, but that's like California, San Francisco, 1960s, all sorts of like philosophies. And his philosophies did actually include Your other man, what's his name?
Alistair Crowley.
Crowley, yeah. But this guy died a long time ago. So whoever's like running this Church of Satan is they do claim to be atheists, which I don't fully
That
understand.
doesn't make any sense when they call it the Church of Satan.
Well,
You know,
here I have a thing. I don't want to read too much, but they do magic ceremonies. Um, I mean, I don't know how atheist you can be if you're doing ceremonial dark magic. That could be the whole thing that you were just talking about, not knowing what they're doing or something.
see, I think that's what it is. I think these young girls have seen, maybe read one book and thought, actually, no, I do that. I like that. That makes sense to me. And I don't believe in all this nonsense. But he's fooled them into being part of his church. You know, he's already brainwashed them.
Yeah. Well, so
You
it
know,
is.
by drawing them in and by
But
reading his book is the only book worth reading, and we can change the meaning of words to suit ourselves because words don't matter. You know,
it does claim to be atheist, which I'm just on Wikipedia now as well, looking at it. But it's the Church of Satan if anyone wants to do a deep dive. But that's different to what we read about there, I suppose, in a sense as well.
that's it. This guy apparently tried to change the meaning of the word and called his church the Church of Satan as an insult to the Christian church. Now, I'm
Yeah,
not Catholic, it's Christian church.
and you might have heard about the
One of
other incident that was that protest against the statue in America, where it turned out to be another satanic group. They were called the Satanic Temple, and they unveiled the statue of a winged goat in Arkansas
That's right.
as a form of protest. I think it was that. It's a good article. I'll put both of the articles down the bottom in the description below. If you have to be in the mood to delve into this kind of stuff.
Well, do you know something? Do you know what stopped me the last day? It is whatever I'm reading, I'll dream about. And I had one horrible night, the first night that I looked into this. And do you know, it's something I was suggestive as a child. I'd watched Frankenstein as a teenager, you know, the one with sort of Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing and everything. And let's face it, it was more entertaining than anything else. I'd have nightmares about it afterwards. I love a good horror, but I can't watch it if I'm in the house of my own.
Yeah.
I need to know somebody's coming home at some stage to be a bit braver.
I had a particularly unlucky day today, just in work and stuff. And I was just like, oh God, today's the day we're talking about Satanism.
I know. I think I've had a particularly unlucky week, and I've said that to you before. There's no luck. Whenever you're talking about the devil, there's no luck around you. There's nothing good around you whenever you're doing that. So we're not going to delve too much into him. I just thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
That those girls were so adamant. And I thought, you really don't realize just how much it's if words aren't important, then don't call yourself a Satanist, call yourself an atheist if you don't believe in God or you don't believe in the devil. But you can't say you're an atheist and you believe, you know, and you're a Satanist. It's not the same.
Yeah, I think
And
these
I think that's what they deceived.
like
Do you know what else?
just like dark magic, hippie dippy 1960s American shite to me.
Not just America. I was watching a program last night. There was
hard.
a family.
That particular Church of Satan and also
Yeah.
the Temple of Satan, which are different. The other thing, and I want to mention that I read about, which I thought was fascinating. I actually heard about it quickly in a documentary and then looked it up because it was spoken about really quickly in passing in the documentary, and they moved on. And I was like, "What? That's more interesting than the whole film that I'm watching."
Yeah.
But basically, it was a short bit where this guy that used to be in MI6 during the Troubles in a part of the organization called Psychological Operations, which is
yes, right, yeah.
and he was involved and was admitting in this documentary to multiple things, but one of the things was they created a satanic panic in Belfast in the 1970s. And the reason was I can also put an article below from The Guardian. The reason was basically to get people who were, I think, religious, like Catholics, to turn them against the provisional IRA because they probably naively thought that they could get people to think that their own people were devil worshippers. But they went and they learned and they read books and they studied Satanism and devil worship in order to do
Do you
these.
think they're telling us the truth?
And not necessarily, especially because they're psyops. But I just think, well,
No, if
either that or
anything,
there was
if
real
anything to
devil
me,
worship.
you were telling me that the other day, and I found it very, very
They
interesting.
tried to blame it. Well, it makes sense that the Brits would try to blame something
But
on
it also
the
sounds to me,
IRA.
it also sounds to me like a cover-up.
Yeah,
That wasn't really happening, and the people that were of high ranking that weren't really involved in this sort of thing in the 70s, the 60s, 70s, or 80s, or whatever, that was just stuff we planted. No, I'm sorry, that just screams too much cover-up for me. And the reason I'm saying that is because I've told you before about my experience of going to see an exorcist in Belfast.
Well,
I didn't go
it's not doubting that things are real. They were just saying that they did. And
no, I know. I'm marking the you're stating it. I'm saying this is what I think of it. I think it's a cover up.
Okay.
And the reason I think it's a cover up is because literally when I went to speak to that priest in Belfast in the 80s, late 80s, it was the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. I remember when I spoke to him, it wasn't on purpose. I spoke to one priest first, and then he says, I think we've got the guy here that you need to talk to. And he came in and he was the exorcist, and he was one of 27 appointed by the church worldwide. And he was specifically in Ireland, and there was 3 in Ireland. And there was 3 in Ireland because of the growing satanic sects that included child abuse that were taking place all over Ireland, not just the 6 counties, the whole 32 counties. And that wasn't long before one of the biggest scandals in paedophilia was exposed along Northern Ireland.
And what's that?
So for the Brits to come out and say now, I mean, there was supposed to be like the priests that were involved were exposed. There was doctors involved that were exposed. That I know, but it was kept a lot quieter because of the hoo-ha around the church part of it. But I think the consensus now is probably to throw so much water on that fire. There's a lot of smoke, and it'll be, something, maybe the half of that, half of them weren't involved. And there was supposed to be a lot of high-ranking people involved. And the reason they got away with it along the northwest coast of Ireland for so long was because of how high up.
Was Mountbatten involved in that?
I don't know. I really don't know, but I do know that it went as far as people in charge in Northern Ireland and people in charge here and things like that.
England as well, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not saying it was the only place, but there was children being trafficked through here. There was videos being made out in Northern Ireland. And I mean, like from Donegal right along this particular coast, whereas it was actually an awful lot of it seems to have been exposed along here. Thank God it was exposed. But I actually think because it wasn't just sort of people that lived in estates that didn't have a lot going to them, they're not the ones that are usually abusing their children, though it does happen.
Yeah.
I told you
before,
before,
the orphans and the people under the. Well, like I heard there was these homes in this one in the north that like even British politicians and stuff in the 70s used to visit.
If you read, there are a lot of cults. There was cults that were exposed in England, and there are girls that are survivors that are quite openly tell their stories. If you go on YouTube and things like that, they have videos and they do it to expose.
Yeah,
the one thing that
IRA is satanic ritual abuse.
Yeah, but the one thing they all have in common is some of the houses they were taken to were these fabulous big stately homes, and it was the rich and famous that were at these places when these children were being brought in.
Yeah.
And it was all involving masks and satanic rituals. And, I remember learning that at a younger age, and I've been very informed by that particular priest and been shocked, been genuinely shocked. I remember at the time thinking, here in Ireland, oh my God, and then it was the reality of it, and then being near people that were involved in it, etc. You don't mess around when it comes to things like that. You just don't. No, that's the reason that I think that's them throwing, sort of trying to throw people off the scent if anyone was to come forward now and say, oh, you know, I was held in such, you know, whatever the reason is, I
Right.
think
Yeah.
trying to exercise some form of cover up.
Yeah, I understand better now. Yeah, very well could have been.
Yeah.
And there was another thing they said about fertilizer bombs. They tried to convince the Catholics that fertilizer bombs were more dangerous than they were, or something like that.
I don't know. It comes to things like that, I really haven't a clue, but it comes to things of the soul, just a wee bit more experience. Comes to the likes of fertilizer bombs. I'm
I
sorry.
don't know, 1970s trouble.
That's way outside my remit, as it were. But yeah, that's what led us on to that story this week, is me being on that site, the paranormal.
Having fights with people online.
Yeah, on Facebook. It was, do you know, I knew what she was getting at, and
Yeah.
I wanted to, and I did give her the opportunity by saying, look, I understand what you're saying, and everything about your life, what you're saying that you follow is you're a good person, you just don't believe in God or the devil. But by calling yourself a Satanist and a member of the Church of Satan, you might not know it, but you're doing the devil's work, you know. So
Yeah,
I was
I
like,
don't really
the
understand
meaning of the
any
word
of,
literally.
like, we don't understand their cult's philosophy, but it doesn't matter really, does it? Like,
No, when that, if that's the case, call yourself an atheist.
yeah,
But I mean, I just thought some people are very easily influenced. Maybe they'll read, you know, I've always said it before, I'd never read one book on a subject by
yeah,
one person and take it as read. I would have to read about half a dozen different authors writing about the same thing and find a common denominator. And then I think, well, that research there's hit on a nerve. That's what I
yeah.
absolutely believe this time.
I usually
I've always been interested in the research side of things, how people find things out, etc.
I usually bounce around. So like I found that I was like, oh, check out this book, and then I was like, oh, I'll look up that article, and then that will make me remember something, and I'm like, oh, I'll look at this other thing that's related.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. And I mean, you won't get that by doing it online.
Yeah.
You won't get the same crack doing it that way online, and you're in and out. And I do that, and then I think, what was that again? It's like opening the fridge.
When you're a serial hoarder like me anyway, I'm gonna say you as well because I know you have a lot of things. I don't know if it's classed as hoarding or just having stuff, but I have loads of
We
books.
haven't got newspapers piled up beside us yet.
No, but we have
Yeah,
collections
as my
of
mum would
books.
say, with a lot of knickknacks.
Yeah, books are going extinct, but we like them.
I love my books. I don't keep novels. I only keep reference books
Yeah,
or
same.
autobiographies or something. I don't keep novels.
Yeah.
But that's before we go as well, I wanted to say is like this Church of Satan in America, it's like the Baptist church, how easy it is to set up a church in the United States.
Yeah, maybe they're only doing it for tax.
You can literally go online, make up any title you want, come up with any sort of genre of living that you want, call it yours, and register yourself, and you can literally rent a building and open a church.
Yeah.
And have people come and worship you and worship your beliefs on a Sunday. I mean, really ridiculously easy, and they have thousands of them.
Yeah, thousands. And you can probably marry people. You can probably like.
Well, you can do that, but you can do that by just doing an online computer course.
True.
It's,
More than England than many faiths online, I believe.
Well, I thought that was an interesting one. I'm going to keep an eye on my cake.
Yeah,
That's
and actually, it wasn't
on.
for what the conversation was about. It wasn't really a dark conversation. It was more us trying to get our head around the word.
Yeah. Well, I kind of avoided going into the sort of darker details because of the kind of week I've had. And I've said that to you before. It's like I feel like I have to sage now after all this research that I've done this week. I feel like he's been on my mind and on my tongue too much. So
yeah, we can just move on to the next thing now.
Well, I thought now, do you know what we'll do for homework this week? Krampus.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and if anybody watching, and we have a few watching, Teresa in Glasgow, hello, how you doing? We have, if you have any ideas of any characters from European legend coming up to Christmas, and if you know of them, text them to us. We'll do our best to look it up and see what we can find out about it.
Yeah, it'd be nice to go into a bit more detail then on Krampus than we did
Yeah,
last year because we
we
didn't.
covered some of it last year, but
Kind of.
we literally just skimmed the surface.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get something like that. Now we're not going to do it every week as such because we're both busy this weather. So every other week, and then over the holidays, you'll probably be sick looking at us. So from me and Donegal, Hawaii, and thanks for joining us again. And from you, Ben.
Good night. EOI.